Hello, my friend, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Fool Writes Again, the podcast where I, Jinx, your host and imaginary friend, answers the burning question of what happens when you release a writer into the wild and he gets a chance to explore the world. So if you've ever been interested in topics such as plot development, world building, character creation, or even character motivation, then this is a podcast for you, so please stay tuned. With that being said, let's get the show on the road and answer the burning question from last episode of what happens when you release a writer into the wild and he gets a chance to explore the world of the Amazon. What better way to do that than start off with a couple scenarios? First scenario is this. Imagine you're an individual and you really wanted to explore the world. You heard there were parts unknown and parts that no person has ever set foot in, and you want to be the person to do that. You've seen Indiana Jones and all these movies about archaeologists, and you want to be the next big name to discover something new. So you book a last-minute trip to the Amazon. You fly there, you get on a boat going down river, you go on it for a couple hours, and you arrive at a little small resort. Resorts being kind, and it's more just a couple of huts. And you meet a guide there, and this guide starts taking you through the jungle. And you're exploring it more and more, and it's super exciting. You're seeing things you've never seen before, but because you know you have a guide, you know these are all things that people have all seen before. These are things that aren't new. Sure, you've never seen them before, and a lot of people haven't, but you can't name any of them. None of them will be named after you because they've been discovered. With that in mind, you decide you're going to turn this into more of an adventure, and you hit a spot where your guide goes around a trail, and you decide you're no longer going to follow him. And you start cutting through the jungle into parts that have not been discovered and traveled on. What happens next? If that's not the scenario for you, how about this one instead? Imagine you've gone to the exact same resort, but you know what you're doing this time. You're an individual who doesn't want to get in a lot of trouble, and you're fully trusting of your guide. And one night, your guide decides to tell you, hey, we're going to go play a little game and go on a night walk. Are you in? And you trust your guide completely, so you say, yes, I'm in. Your guide says, okay, meet up here in a couple hours just before nightfall and we'll set off. You wait the couple hours, and then eventually the time is arrived and you go to the designated meeting spot and you see there's 3 other people there. And a couple minutes later, your guide shows up and he mentions that you're all there, and you start following him on this dark trail through the jungle. And you're only navigating by headlamp. After you've been traveling for half hour or so, you reach a spot and your guide tells you, it's time for the game. Let's see how well you truly fare in the dark jungle, all alone. And he leaves you there, and the rest of the group runs away, and you are stuck to listen in the dark by yourself of an unfamiliar jungle. What happens next? Don't like that scenario? How about this one instead? Imagine you have been hiking for a while through the jungle. It's hot and humid, and you feel sticky, and you're tired. And you eventually arrive at a small lake that has several canoes docked at a port. Now, the canoes look very old, and you don't really trust them completely, but you think to yourself, it'd be quite nice to explore what's on the lake without actually having to walk anymore. So you push one of the canoes away, you hop in, and you start paddling out. And you're looking down into the water, and you see a lot of little fish. But you can't get a good look at them. They're underwater, and you're on top of it. So you try to entice the fish to come see you. You start pulling food out of your backpack, and you start tossing it in the water. And suddenly, a whole bunch of little fish surface and start eating the food you've been tossing in. And you think it's awesome. You stop there in the middle and you pull out your phone and you start recording the fish eating all the little food and think to yourself, this will be a great thing to post when I get home. But while you're recording those fish, you miss the giant ripples that are forming on the other side of the boat that are attracted by all of the little fish at the surface of the lake. What happens next? And because I want to have a little bit of fun with my scenarios, here's a holiday-themed one for you. Imagine you're in the jungle and you're with a small group of people just hiking along. You've been at it for a couple hours now, and you've seen a lot of interesting bugs and butterflies and spiders and ants. But you've also seen a lot of cool mammals. You've seen monkeys, and then you've seen birds, and then you've seen the large cats that you shouldn't see, and you're just taking photos of it. And at one point, you hear monkeys up above, so you look up, and you see all the monkeys up there, but while you're looking at the monkeys, there is a flying over the distance of those monkeys, and that sleigh drops something into the jungle. And as it's falling, you're realizing it's getting closer and closer to you. And eventually it lands directly next to your group. And there's just a giant bag. What happens next? Now I feel that is enough with the scenarios for now, so let's get to the story behind them. Recently, I spent a couple days in the Amazon. It was a very spur-of-the-moment trip for me, and I only added it on because I was already in Peru and thought to myself, when will I ever get a chance to come to the Amazon? When I come back to Peru, maybe. But that'll be a couple of years because I've did Peru already, and my next places will probably bring me to a different continent, and I decided I'm going to explore it. And it was a very interesting trip. 4 days of things I never expected to encounter. And the trip started off by me taking a very small plane to probably the smallest airport I've ever been to. And by that I mean there was like 2 terminals, and only 2 planes could pretty much fit there. You get off the plane, your checked bags get off next to you. You can watch the employees carry your bags like 12 feet, put on a conveyor belt. You walk about 15 feet to get into the airport itself. Once you're in the airport, your bag is right there next to you on the conveyor belt. It would have been quicker to actually pick up your bag from the plane instead of let the employee carry it to the conveyor belt. And another 100 feet or so, you were out of the airport. Very tiny, but very cool. Getting out of the airport, I then took a taxi to a office, and then I took a bus from the office to the river, and then I took a boat about 3 hours upriver, and I got to a small lodge. The lodge is pretty cool. Unlike in my scenario, it was decently sized. There were probably 20 or so buildings there, and each of those buildings were decent sized, constructed of wood and nets. I kind of used that little lodge as my base of operations for a lot of things. And the very first night there, my guide told me, we're going to go on a night walk. And we go on a night walk, and he takes us pretty far into the jungle. And we're only navigating by headlamp. And he has a machete with him, and we're seeing all these different animals and bugs and things like that. We get far enough into the jungle, and he says, hey, let's play a game and show you how terrifying the jungle truly can be. And this game involved leaving every single person by themselves in the dark for 10 minutes. The very first person he dropped off, he gave him the machete and told him after 10 minutes he can start retrieving everyone else. And our entire group was eventually just spread out among the trail. And I'll tell you, that was probably the longest 10 minutes of my life. I'm sitting there waiting for something to happen. I can hear all the animals in the jungle. I can hear the bugs. I can even hear the river. But I can't see anything. My eyes never really adjusted to be able to see anything. So I'm just hearing things. And as a writer, my imagination only plays games on me. So I'm not imagining just the animals that's out there. I'm imagining everything else out there. And it's just creepy and super surreal. Would I do it again? Probably not. Am I glad I did it? Yes, I am. And after 10 minutes, my buddy came and retrieved me from there, and I can actually see light, and we went and retrieved everyone else, and everyone was fine. But it was, again, super creepy. And for a minute there, I really did think I was being left in the dark for a lot longer than 10 minutes, and I was beginning to get nervous that the person who was supposed to retrieve me wasn't coming. And after that, we continued along, and we made it back to our lodges, and we slept, and we woke up the next day. And on the next day, we went and took the boat another hour upriver and went on a hike looking for different animals and bugs and trees. And our guide was pointing out everything along the way, and he was telling us stories about the Amazon, about how there's so many different places that people haven't visited because it's just undiscovered, and there are only certain places that people live. But there's also places we know others live, but they are unwelcome to outsiders. Tribes of people, as soon as an outsider gets close to them and leaves the trail, they're likely to snag the outsider, and you will never see that person again. Didn't have that happen, thankfully, but the story was there, and it was interesting, so I played with it. But on that same hike, we ended up going to a little lake in the middle of the Amazon jungle. not connected to any of the rivers, and it was very small, and there were a couple of kayaks there. And our guide took us on the kayak, took us around it, and he started feeding the piranha. And by that, he was pulling out crackers and crushing them in his hand and tossing them into the water. I did not know piranha ate crackers. That was completely different to me. And I saw hundreds of them just surface to come eat the crackers. And after we got off the lake, our guide told us that there are other things that lurk in the water that only come out during like rainy season, such as anaconda. I never saw one there, but apparently they can just reside at the bottom of the lakes and rivers and surface when they want to. So that was also very creepy. And then my days pretty much consisted of the exact same thing. We would go hiking and animal spotting and on boat rides. And at one point, we're hiking through one of the trails and you could see little planes up in the sky. And kind of cool to see, but then we were informed that not all the planes you see there are friendly. Some of the planes are from smugglers that are getting drugs into the country. They'll come from another country, fly into the Amazon, and they will drop their cargo into the jungle, and their partners in the Amazon will then go and retrieve them. Mind you, those parts of the jungle are away from all the touristy areas, but it's still an interesting thought of this happens in the jungle, and chances are I saw drugs being smuggled into it because there was a plane in the sky. I never saw them drop anything, and nothing ever came close to me, so that's all speculation. But the thought that that could have happened while I was there is very interesting. And I mention all of that because the story itself of the Amazon is fun. But I realized as I was there, and specifically over the last couple episodes, that I can use a lot of my stories from the Amazon for inspiration for writing. There's a lot to play with there, a lot to tackle, and a lot of other combinations with it. So I'll go slightly out of order as I talk through my inspiration and the scenarios. That final scenario of the sleigh being seen in the sky, yes, there's a lot of leeway taken on my part for that. But I decided I'm going to have fun with this. 'Tis the season. The holidays are coming up, and with the holidays, you get Santa constantly visiting things. So what if you were to go to a place and suddenly see Santa in the sky, and he accidentally dropped a bag of something? Is it a good bag? Is it a bad bag? Whatever's in that bag, you can play with as a writer. In my initial thought, it's, oh, look, Santa just dropped off a whole bunch of toys that accidentally fell out of his sleigh. But that's on the premise that it's actually Santa. My scenario, I never claimed who it was. I just said sleigh. There could be a whole bunch of other beings out there that use a sleigh to get around. For all we know, it could be someone who is kidnapping naughty individuals in their bag, and suddenly one of those bags fell out of the sleigh because the naughty individual is trying to flee and escape. And he manages to, and he appears in front of you. It creates a very interesting story of who was actually in the sleigh. Why was this person in a bag in the sleigh? How did they survive the fall? What are they going to do now that they're free? What are they going to do with you? Are you going to help them? Are you going to run away? A lot of possibilities as a writer, and that is just simply because I combined my experience in the Amazon of seeing planes with the idea of the holidays coming up. There's nothing saying that they can't use holiday inspiration with true life inspiration. How do you think we get fiction and fantasy worlds? People play with their imagination. Now, every other scenario I gave has more of a horror connotation in it because Halloween just happened and my mind is set on scary stuff. And it's very easy to combine scary with the Amazon, I found out. There were so much things there that are not known to the people, and it is a resonance of the unknown, and people are terrified of the unknown. What lurks beneath the water? It could be little small fish that are playful, but it could be some giant monster. In that little lake, you could have accidentally woken up an anaconda, or you could have accidentally awoken some giant monster that has been asleep for thousands of years, and that lake has never really been used for leisure. It's always been used for ceremony. And because you were on there for leisure and didn't follow the correct ceremony, you unleashed something that should not have been unleashed. That's one possibility for the story. But then there's also the other possibility that you go super realistic and an anaconda just appears. Possibilities there. It is up to us as the writer to decide if we're going realistic or if we're going fantasy. And there is not just one or the other. There is a scale. You can be mostly realistic with a touch of fantasy or mostly fantasy with a touch of realism. It's all up to whoever is writing it and whoever's creating that story. And then I play further with the unknown with my other scenarios. What happens if you leave the trail? What happens if you're abandoned in the dark? Leaving the trail and you knowing there could be cannibalistic tribes out there and you may never be found because you strayed from the trail. It's already common sense that you stay on the trail because that is the known path. Once you leave the unknown, there is no guarantee for safety. Just like if you take away all light and are left alone, you've lost all your safety means because you don't know what lurks out there. You don't know what lurks in the dark. You don't know what lurks off the trail. As a writer, you can play up your dread and suspense meters by creating things like that too, especially in a horror story. What is the dread factors of being left alone, straying from the path, and all that stuff? And you can create a pretty unique story by upping the ante on those factors. But it doesn't have to be for scary stuff either. You can do it for a whole bunch of other genres. You could give an actual reason why your character leaves the path. Maybe they're not leaving the path of their own volition because they want to find something undiscovered. Maybe they heard a cry for help off in the distance and they want to help this person. And they get there and they find another character that could become the love of their life. And now you've turned a very scary, dreadful thought of what is this character running off to, showing some bravery, into he is now running off to help someone that he has no idea who it is. So dread does not always have to lead to horror. Dread and factors like that can lead to other genres and make it even more outstanding of why your character is moving along with certain things. It's just a matter of having fun with it. But unfortunately, that is all the time I have for this episode. But before I let you go, I have a writing prompt for you. Write a story about an individual who decides to take a last-minute trip to the jungle. When he gets to the jungle, he hops on a boat going upriver, and the captain ends up taking him to a spot of the river that he shouldn't go. What happens next? I don't care what genre it is, if it's horror, fantasy, romance. I don't care what format it is, if it's fiction, flash fiction, short story, poetry, or anything like that. All I really care about is you make the most of it and have fun with it. But now I really do have to let you go. If you enjoyed the contents of this week's episode, please like and subscribe. If you are curious about any other content related to the Jinks'd world, you can visit my website at jinxedworld.com, JINKSDWORLD.com, or you can visit my Instagram page at The Full Writes Again. And please be sure to tune into the next episode where I talk about world building and the Amazon. With that being said, have a fantastic rest of your day, because I know I will.